guys, welcome back to another video. Today's video is another weird world history, and today I'm going to be talking about the Molasses flood of 1919. Have you ever wondered what happens when a giant tank of molasses explodes, raining down viscous molasses over everything? Well, today you're going to find out what happens when that exact event occurs. Let's get into it. Molasses can be fermented into ethanol, which is a main component of alcohol and munitions. The Purity Distilling Company facility at 529 Commercial Street near Keeney Square in Boston was doing exactly that. A considerable amount of molasses was stored on the property. It would sit in giant tanks until it could be put into a pipeline, which would take it to Cambridge, Massachusetts. The molasses tank stood at 50 feet tall and 90 feet in diameter. This tank could hold up to 2.3 million U.S. gallons of molasses. On January 15, 1919, temperatures in Boston rose to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, which was a drastic jump from the previous days, which were in the negatives or close to it. The day before, a ship arrived, dropping off another load of molasses, and it was warmed, so it was easier to transfer from the boat to the tank. Possibly due to the thermal expansion of the older, colder molasses, on January 15, 1919, at approximately 12:30 p.m., the tank burst. Witnesses reported that they felt the ground shake and heard a loud bang. Some of them reported it as an elevated train going by, or a deep growling, a tremendous crashing, a thunderclap-like bang, and the sound of a machine gun. As when the tank started to break, the rivets were popping out like popcorn kernels in a popcorn bag, which is no good. The density of molasses is about 1.4 metric tons per cubic meter, or about 12 pounds per U.S. gallon. It is 40% more dense than water, which means it's got more potential energy. This energy was translated to a 25-foot wave of molasses. Some reports range from 15 to 40 feet high and 60 feet wide. Regardless, it was a lot of molasses, and it was powerful. The wave was of sufficient force to drive steel panels of the burst tank against the girders of the adjacent Boston Elevated Railway's Atlantic Avenue structure and tip a streetcar momentarily off the L's tracks. Stephen Puello, who wrote a book on the molasses flood, describes how nearby buildings were swept off their foundations and crushed. Molasses, waist deep, covered the street and swirled and bubbled about the wreckage. Here and there struggled a form. Whether it was animal or human being was impossible to tell. Only an upheaval, a thrashing about in the sticky mass, showed where any life was. Horses died like so many flies on sticky fly paper. The more they struggled, the deeper in the mess they were ensnared. Human beings, men and women, suffered likewise. The Boston Globe reported that people were thrown by the burst of air many feet forward. Others had debris hurled at them either from the wind or from inside the molasses. A truck was picked up and hurled into the harbor. Just whoop! After the initial wave hit, the molasses became viscous as the air was quite cool, and it began to stick to literally everything. About 150 people were injured, and 21 died, whether it was from drowning in molasses, being thrown into a river, or being hit by debris. Edwards Park wrote of one child's experience in a 1983 article for Smithsonian. Anthony D. Stasio, walking homeward with his sisters from the Michelangelo School, was picked up by the wave and carried, tumbling on its crest almost as though he was surfing. Then he grounded, and the molasses rolled him like a pebble as the wave diminished. He heard his mother call his name and couldn't answer. His throat was so clogged with the smothering goo. He passed out, then opened his eyes to find 3 of his 4 sisters staring at him. First to the scene were 116 cadets under the direction of Lieutenant Commander H.J. Copeland from the USS Nantucket, a training ship of the Massachusetts Nautical School. The cadets ran several blocks toward the accident and entered the knee-deep flood of molasses to try and pull people out of it. The Boston Police, Red Cross, Army, and Navy soon arrived. Red Cross nurses jumped into the molasses to try and pull people out of it, while others tended to the injured and tried to keep the workers fed and warm after being exhausted. Many of these people that came to the rescue worked through the night, and they continued searching for survivors for 4 whole days. There were so many injured that they had to create a makeshift hospital because there was no space for them. Many of the dead were so glazed over with molasses, it was hard to even tell who they were. Other victims were swept into the Boston Harbor and not found for months afterward. In the wake of the accident, 119 residents brought a class action lawsuit against the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, or USIA, which bought the company that owned the tank back in 1917. It was one of the first class action lawsuits in Massachusetts and is considered a milestone toward better regulations in companies. The company claimed that the tank was blown up by anarchists because they were using the ethanol produced by the molasses for munitions. However, after it was taken to court and there was multiple hearings after a few years of this, they're like, yeah, nah, it's your fault, pay them money. The company ultimately paid out $628,000 in damages, which is over $1 million today.
So, I don't know where I got that $1 million number, but I actually went into a inflation calculator and $628,000 translates to $11.3 million. So, that's a dramatic amount more.
Cleanup crews used salt water and sand to absorb the molasses. Due to the amount of molasses over everything, the harbor was brown for that summer. The cleanup of the immediate area took weeks because not only did they have to clean molasses off of literally everything, but there were buildings that were pushed off foundations and just picked up and in places they should not be. So it wasn't just the sticky residue they had to clean up. They had to rebuild parts of entire blocks. It took longer than it normally would because people were tracking the molasses to other parts of town. Sightseers, workers, anyone who was near the molasses area would track it onto trains and into buildings, and literally everything was sticky. Several factors may have contributed to this disaster. The first factor is that the tank may have leaked from the very first day when it was built in 1915. The tank was constructed poorly and not tested efficiently, and the carbon dioxide production may have raised the internal pressure due to the formation of the molasses. Warmer weather would have assisted in this pressure as it rose from about 2 degrees to 41 degrees. The failure occurred near a manhole cover at the base of the tank where a fatigue crack possibly grew to the point of critical where it just burst. The tank had been filled to capacity only 8 times since its construction, putting the walls under intermediate pressure. Several authors say that the Purity Distilling Company was trying to outrace the prohibition, as the 18th Amendment was ratified the next day on January 16, 1919, and went into effect a year later. So they weren't following protocols. They're like, ooh, prohibition's on the horizon. We gotta get this alcohol going. An inquiry after the disaster revealed that Arthur Jail, the treasurer of the USIA, neglected basic safety tests on the tank, didn't know anything about architecture or how to test a tank like this. While building this tank, they kind of just glossed over safety tests, like filling it with water to see if there was any leaks anywhere. They ignored warning signs such as groans when it was filled with molasses. They're like, it's normal. This man had no architectural or engineering experience, but he was supposed to be building this tank and testing it, which he wasn't doing. When filled with molasses, the tank leaked so badly that they painted the tank brown so it would hide all the leaks. Like, you can't see the molasses if it's painted brown. This was a common fact throughout the town. Everyone knew that the tank leaked. I mean, residents would even collect the leaked molasses for themselves. A 2014 investigation applied modern engineering analysis and found that the steel was half as thick as it should be. Another issue was the steel lacked manganese and was made very brittle. Even the rivets were flawed in this tank. Literally everything about it was flawed. In 2016, a team of scientists at the Harvard University conducted an extensive study of the disaster, gathering data from many sources, including 1919 newspaper articles, old maps, etc. The student researchers also studied the behavior of cold corn syrup, flooding a scale model of the neighborhood where the tank exploded. Researchers concluded that the reports of a high speed of this flood were credible. 2 days before the disaster, warmer molasses had been added to the tank, reducing the viscosity of the fluid. When the tank collapsed, the fluid cooled quickly as it spread until it reached Boston's winter evening temperatures, and the viscosity increased dramatically. Harvard's study concluded that the molasses cooled and thickened quickly as it rushed through the streets, hampering efforts to free victims who were now trapped in it. The company did not rebuild the tank. I wonder why. The property, formerly housing the tank, and the North End Paving Company became a yard for the Boston Elevated Railway. It is now the site of a city-owned recreational complex officially named Langone Park, featuring a Little League baseball field, a playground, and Bosch courts. Immediately to the east is a larger Popolo Park with additional recreational facilities. A small plaque at the entrance of Popolo Park, placed by the Bostonian Society, commemorates the disaster. The plaque reads, "On January 15, 1919, a molasses tank at 529 Commercial Street exploded under pressure, killing 21 people. A 40-foot wave of molasses buckled the elevated railway tracks, crushed buildings, and inundated the neighborhood. Structural defects in the tank, combined with unseasonably warm temperatures, contributed to the disaster." The accident has since become a staple of the local culture, not only for the damage the flood brought, but also for the sweet smell that filled the north end of the neighborhood for literal decades. On January 15th, 2019, on the 100th anniversary of the flood, a ceremony was held in remembrance. Ground-penetrating radar was used to identify the exact location of the tank from 1919. The concrete slab for the tank lies about 20 feet underneath the baseball diamond. So people circled around where the outline of the platform would be and had a ceremony for those who lost their lives the day of the tragic molasses flood. Many laws and regulations governing construction was changed in direct result of this tank explosion, and now when it comes to these sort of things, it has to be overseen by a licensed architect and civil engineer. So you can't just have anyone just being like, "What's up, guys? I'm going to build a tank, fill it with molasses," not have any experience in building these things, and let's see what happens. This tragedy could have been avoided if the company wasn't cutting corners. But this was near the end of World War I when this tank was built. This company was trying to save money, get this product out as quickly as possible, and Prohibition was just around the corner. And what they were using the molasses for included the main component of alcohol. So they were trying to get their money in, because once Prohibition hit, they'd lose a ton of business. So they were cutting corners everywhere, and it resulted in 21 people dying, 150 being injured, and I don't even know how many horses drowned, because they described it as flies like on a fly trap, but with horses, which is horrible. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This story has been something I've been interested in for a very long time. I actually watched a puppet history episode on this and wanted to talk about it myself. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll be back again next week with another one. Alright guys, see you later. Whew.